Hello, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. I first want to apologize for the very low tech that is being used to produce this video. Hopefully the content will make up for the lack of technology and the lack of professionalism in this video, because I just want to have a honest conversation. The question I ask today is, are Christians today some of the dumbest people you've ever met? I know it may sound harsh, but I really do wonder that. So many today seem to be ignorant and arrogant that what they believe is the way, and that so much so that they try to constantly change the laws in our nation for morality and godliness sake, and at the same time tell you that you're a sinner, that you're doing things wrong, that you're living a sinful life, and that you're destined for hell. You know, there are many faiths over the world, different cultures, different people believe a lot of different things. And many of them, they're just very personal. Maybe they're very cultural. They're not looking to go out into the world and recruit a bunch of people to believe in the same things. But Christianity has a history of this kind of recruiting strategy. Except that today it seems like if that's your goal, if you're a Christian and you want people to join your faith, it seems that the strategies that are being employed today often backfire in their faces, and has the opposite effect of trying to encourage people to join their faith. And this is what's so maddening to me. Like, it's kind of blows my mind a little bit. And then they double down on their beliefs and methods. And today it's even worse. Not only do we have to endure their beliefs on various sexual orientations and self-identities, but now during a pandemic we have to hear about how churches must remain open for all the sinners to come in and be saved. Because, there's so many sinners, like by the thousands, who want to go to these soul-saving churches during a pandemic, right? Well, actually probably wouldn't even happen regardless of a pandemic or not. But it's kind of this kind of thinking that is why I'm asking these questions. I heard it once said that if you think you're a leader, go for a walk, and if no one's following you, then you're simply taking a walk. I think that if you're a believer and a follower of Jesus, and that your faith says go out, share his message, save the lost, but no one's listening to you, then are you truly a follower of his? Now, before I have Christians jumping all over me, I'm not saying that you don't believe in Jesus. You do, whatever. I'm saying that if you believe that your job is to share his message and bring people to your faith, and that's not what's happening, then maybe there's something wrong with the strategy or your belief. Most people, I used to remember where if you said, oh, I went to church, or, I'm a Christian or whatever, most people would ignore it. Most people would maybe roll their eyes, or even some people would say, if I had kids, maybe a family, it might be a good idea to go to church. It seemed like a good thing to do. But now it's not that people are even ignoring Christians. It's that most people, when they hear the term Christian, or hear that people go to church, or hear that they read the Bible or whatever, that it's not just ignoring, it's that these people are actually seen as hateful, arrogant, ignorant, misogynistic, bigoted, simpletons, homophobics, whatever. All these types of terms. So it's not even that, the message is going out and people are ignoring it. It's that the message that's actually coming across is actually bringing a very negative response. If the goal was to get people in a recruit, to recruit them to your faith. It's interesting to me, for generations, Christians have preached peace and love and being law abiding citizens. And yet now we have them willfully breaking the law in many places, defying health orders. And when asked why, it's because they believe that the Bible tells them that's the right thing to do. They believe that God has commanded them to congregate and that God's law supersedes man's laws, and so therefore they're correct. And they don't have to worry about the laws of the land. They believe that it's a sin to close the church. They and they protest their religious free, the right for their religious freedom. But yet, on the other hand, they'll condemn others for their right to protest or parade for pride or for pro-choice or for democratic rallies or whatever. But of course they can, because they're right, their way is the right way, and after all, they're the godly ones. They're the righteous ones. They're the moral ones in society, while everyone is wicked and immoral and doomed to hell. They're the light on the city of the hill, or whatever, and salt of the earth, and all these kind of things, right? But then I hear these kind of crazy things. Sure, there's those anti-medicine, anti-vax, anti-modern medicine groups. I'd actually respect those people, because if they've always been anti-modern medicine and anti-vaccination, and well, then it would make sense that they would have nothing to do with the jab, today. But many Christians, as far as I understand, are for modern medicine, for modern healthcare, for um, you know, getting vaccinations against chickenpox and measles and polio and whatever else. And then all of a sudden you've got the jab now for the pandemic, and it's now the mark of the beast. What? Where did this come from? And there's this messaging of how the raging immorality of society, mainly of course same-sex marriages and relationships, are going to bring God's judgment on the earth, just as God wiped out humanity because of all the sin through the flood that people were committing, and God's judgment is going to come again because of the wickedness and immorality of today's society. We hear about Sodom being destroyed because of homosexuality. Now, for those of you listening, if you're like, yeah, I totally agree with this guy. I'm not saying that you have to read the Bible. I'm not saying that you have to believe the Bible. What I'm going to simply do here is to say, if someone believes what the Bible says, that it's the Word of God, that it's the inspired Word of His, that it's telling us all the truth and everything, how we should live our lives and yada, 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 then I'm going to just mention a passage. And I'm going to do this throughout the videos because I want to ask some serious questions. So in Romans 5, verse 12 to 14, it says, "Therefore, just as through one man sin entered the world, and death through sin, and thus death spread to all men, because all sinned. For until the law, sin was in the world, but sin is not imputed when there is no law. Nevertheless, death reigned from Adam to Moses, even over those who had not sinned according to the likeness of the transgression of Adam, who is the type of him who was to come." So let's just see if I understand this correctly. It's saying that the law came with Moses. So if you have ever seen like the Charlton Heston movie, The Ten Commandments, right? So Moses comes down from the mountain, Mount Sinai, talking with God. He's carrying these 2 tablets, and on the tablet he's got the law. He's got the 10 Commandments. Now, Christians believe that Moses brought the law. But if you follow the Bible and you believe what it says, Noah and Sodom and Gomorrah came like 1,000 years before Moses brought the law down from Mount Sinai. So if until the law, Moses getting the law, sin was in the world, but sin was not held against people when there is no law, then how come God sent a flood for punishment, as punishment for all the immorality and sexual deviancy that we're continually told happened in Noah's day in Sodom and Gomorrah? Did God punish people that he didn't hold their sin against them? I think that's a fair question. Yet how many years have we endured these beliefs? Seems like there might be either a misunderstanding of this passage or the belief or the Bible itself. Just saying. Doesn't the Bible say in Proverbs 16:7, when a person's ways are pleasing to the Lord, he causes even his enemies to make peace with him? This kind of seems contrary to today's reality. I don't see a lot of people being very peaceful or kind or, oh yeah, they're Christians, they believe in the Bible. I think it's kind of wacky, but let them believe what they want to believe. I don't kind of see that attitude today. I think I see a lot of the opposite. And doesn't it seem like what Christians are not only preaching but doing, making enemies of the lost people, enemies of those lost people of God? See, the problem I have with most Christians today is what I call the copy and paste mentality. And what I mean by that, it seems to me like when I read comment boards, like even stuff that doesn't even have to do with Christianity, where we read a financial watch a financial video and somebody quotes the Bible in the comment section. And I see a lot of this. There's no context. It's just copy and paste a passage. And it's like, well, what does this have to do with anything? And I think that it seems sometimes like they have an idea, they have a belief, and it's like, oh, I'm going to take a piece here and I'm going to take a piece here and put it together. And there, oh, it says exactly what I've been saying. There's no context. There's no even distinguishing between, like from what I understand about the Bible is that there's context, right? The Old Testament has to do a lot with Israel, and the New Testament has to do with a lot with Christians and with Jesus, but yet they'll pull verses from here and there and everywhere and make something up. And we know this because there's like 2,000 different Christian denominations who all think they're right. And but I guess if you think that you're righteous and you think that you're godly and you think that you've got the way, well, I guess you can just copy and paste your way to prove, what you think is right. It's funny how many Christians get so riled up when they hear the phrase "my truth," right? Or the idea that I can believe what I believe and you believe what you believe, and we can both think that our beliefs are true. Yet they say, well, no, we have the truth. They preach the truth, which of course, this truth forces others by influencing politics and religious institutions and all these types of things. It's funny. I remember, I guess, a movement or a campaign or whatever you want to call it called WWJD. Maybe you've heard of it, and it stood for What Would Jesus Do? And there was a song, and there's a whole thing, to go around this thing, and you wore a bracelet, and it said WWJD, and you know, and I thought, okay, so it says, what would Jesus do? And I guess, if you're a follower of Jesus, if you believe in Jesus, and you're reminded to ask in a situation, what would Jesus do? That would be a good thing. But I don't think it encouraged people to read about Jesus. I think it just reminded them to say, oh, in this situation, I believe that this is right. I think this is what Jesus would do. And so, because I think Jesus would do this, and Jesus is the truth, well, then what I must be doing is the truth, is right. And I think it ended up creating a bunch of, when we talk about, my truth and the people's philosophy, I think it created a bunch of Christians who thought their truth was the truth, and that their belief was right because, well, they just looked at their wrist and asked WWJD. And so, and I think that's probably part of the reason why we have so many people telling us the truth but can't really agree with each other. And that's the other thing. How much disorganization and disarray is there amongst Christians who can't agree on anything? Some say this is how you're saved. Some say that's how you're saved. Some say you have to be baptized this way or baptized this way or attend this kind of church, or, they call each other's false teachers and false prophets and wolves in sheep's clothing. And just look at Rabbi Zacharias. I've even heard like Christian people, and like I respect Rabbi and what he did. Do I condone what this stuff surrounding him? No, of course not. But when he was alive and the things that he said, some of them made sense. But yet now it's like I've even heard some Christian people say that, well, he's not saved. He wasn't saved. He's probably in hell. What? He was like your champion for Jesus for so many years. And now you're just like, no, he's probably in hell. That's crazy. And yet you want people to come to these churches that you're fighting to keep open, to learn about this stuff. Now I'm going to tell you a little bit about my background and kind of where all this is coming from. See, I grew up in church. That might surprise some of you. Might not, I don't know. Maybe you're like, yeah, that explains this whole video. But what you need to understand is I didn't have a bad experience. I know a lot of people, maybe they're forced to go, maybe like, they got told some things that they didn't agree with and didn't like how church was. But growing up, I grew up in church, and good Baptist church or Baptist background, one of those real conservative types. And I enjoyed it, and I looked forward. I had friends. I'd go to youth group, and I'd go to Sunday school, and I learned all the stories and everything. But the thing is, as a kid, when you're in the playground playing with your friends or at school or whatever, you're thinking more of superheroes and dinosaurs than you are about God. So it didn't really come up in a lot of conversations. And so I just kind of had, learned what I learned. But as I entered high school, and questions started coming up, and, I was like, yeah, I believe in God, and yeah, I go to church, and I read the Bible. And then I quickly learned, not everybody thinks the same way that I do. Not everybody believes in God or the Bible. And I started, and not that I wasn't like overtly religious. It just, somebody asked me a question or it came up in a conversation. I'd be like, yeah, and not thinking really anything of it. And so people would then like start gathering around, where I sat or my desk, and started questioning me and mocking me and just like saying things like, oh, you believe that God, made, created the world in, 6 days, and what about evolution, and what about, this and that, and I quickly found out I didn't really have any answers. I didn't really ever, and looking back, I kind of feel dumb now, because I never really asked any questions. And it was really hard for me because something else about me is that I got picked on a lot for as long as I can remember. Early on, like I had a lazy eye, and I had to wear a patch and glasses, and I got teased for that. And eventually that got fixed. Um, but then it was about my name or how I dressed or the haircut I had or whatever it was. I remember that I just got teased. Not so much bullied or beat up, but just kind of teased and laughed at and kind of made fun of, as a kid. And it wasn't all the time, but there's just this constant thing that was there. Well, what got me through it was, I guess, going to church, having some friends, singing the song Jesus Loves Me, you know, and believing that God had created me as someone special, and kind of holding on to that idea helped me kind of endure, the name calling and teasing and stuff that had gone on. And when I got to high school, then there was a bully, and he picked on me, tormented me, beat me up. And my life in early high school was hell every day. And then when this whole thing started coming up, the faith that I held on to and the faith that I believed in that got me through those times was shredded. And I couldn't deal with it. Not only did I feel like I was this odd person, this weirdo, now everybody in school knew me as the Christian, the Bible thumper, in their view, the moron who believed these fairy tales. And but I felt betrayed by the church, my friends that I had there, and parts of my family. I felt I'd been lied to. And now I was being made a fool for the things that I thought I believed. And it broke me. Uh, Life was very dark at that time. I became very depressed. And I thought about suicide a lot and taking my life. Because, as probably many of you know, high school at the time that you're living it seems like it'll never end for some people. Seems like it'll define who you are forever. And I had rung a bell I couldn't unring. And I knew the bullying wasn't going to stop. And I knew that this whole area of teasing wasn't going to stop. And I couldn't live any longer with that. I didn't know how I was going to go on. Of course, nobody knew about it. It was only something that I broke down at night in the darkness of my room. night after night. And I remember one night thinking about it so seriously that I was terrified to die. And I was terrified to continue on living. And I called out to God. And I said, if you exist, if you're out there, if you're real, then help me. Do something, please, because I am at the end here. I don't know what to do. Something like that. It was definitely an outpouring from the depths of my soul. A cry for help. And I just remember crying and crying and begging. Because I didn't want to die. But I couldn't live any longer with all this stuff going on. All I remember is passing out. Falling asleep. And I woke up the next morning and nothing was different. Nothing had changed. The bully still tormented me. I had the same dread going to school. I still got teased for things that they thought I believed. Now I didn't think I did. I had no answers. And I had no revelation. I had no change in my circumstances. Nothing changed. And the thing that I think that most people, when you talk about God, especially if they're quite angry about the whole topic, is probably because they've had a similar circumstance. Maybe not bullying, but a moment in their life where they have had, maybe they've grown up in church, maybe they've always believed that God might exist. And they've come to a point in their life where they just need God to step up. They need Him to do something, heal someone, do something. And they call out with all sincerity, and all they hear is silence. All they have is the darkness staring back, and the emptiness. And see, the thing that was different about me was I could have walked away from God. I could have walked away from the church. I could have walked away from everything. But I was angry. I had been made a fool of. I had believed the church. I had believed what they taught me. And I said something. I didn't back down when somebody asked me, do you believe in God? Are you a Christian? I didn't back down. I said, yeah, I was. And I'd been made a fool of, and I was angry. So instead of wanting to die, I wanted to live. I wanted to be the good Christian. I wanted to study the Bible. I wanted to bring the Bible to school. I wanted to be this perfect Christian. I wanted to learn about why people believed what they believed, and then I wanted to destroy it. I wanted to learn the arguments, and then I wanted to logically, rationally destroy it, as I've just tried to do in the beginning of this, is use their beliefs against them. So that when they looked at me and they said, oh, Merle's this strong Christian, he talks about Jesus, he brings the Bible, that they would I would earn their respect, and then I would destroy their faith, as mine had been destroyed. And many of you might be saying, oh wow, that's dark. Yeah, it was a dark time in my life. I'm not proud of it. But I was very angry and hurt and betrayed. So just so that you know where I come from, and you understand a little bit about what I've been through, this video is not about what my parents believe. It's not about what the church I grew up. It's not about anything that you might think, oh, it's because he grew up in a Christian home. It's because of all these things. No. This is where I was at. This is what I had set out to do. And yet today, 25 years later, I am a believer in Jesus Christ. Not because of some religious institution, not because of some teacher or preacher on YouTube, not because of the beliefs, because I do really think that many Christians are some of the dumbest people I've ever met. I really do believe that. And I'm embarrassed at many times to call myself a Christian. I am a follower of Jesus. I believe in Jesus. And one of the things that people would ask, well, why? How did you go from trying to destroy people's faith purposely, like not just walking away from the church or walking away from God and becoming an atheist, but trying to destroy people's faith, to this? And the interesting thing, it's see, many Christians tried to defend their faith about the past. People try to defend creation versus evolution. People try to defend the amount of biblical text compared to other writings, and the number of copies that we have. Some people try to defend archaeological sites and archaeological finds to prove elements of the Bible. For me, none of that made me a believer, because I couldn't trust what Christians talked about. See, anything in the past, nobody can go back to the beginning of time and say what happened. Maybe God created the world, maybe he didn't. Nobody can prove that. Nobody can prove that the tomb is actually empty and that Jesus rose from the grave. Even if we found the tomb today, and let's say it was the right one, we could verify that, and it's empty. You can't prove that nobody stole the body. You can't prove that you actually have the right one. So to me, you can't go in the past. Now, many people, look, there are scholars, there are experts, there are intelligent people who are way smarter, archaeologists, scientists. Lots of videos on YouTube if you want to explore those areas. That is not my area. And that is not why I believe in Jesus today. It's interesting for me to know, but it's not how I changed. As I was learning and trying to find flaws and loopholes, I came across a couple of passages, a couple of chapters. And this might go into a second part for me to break down exactly what I believe. But one of the things that I never heard of, in church or from any other Christian, and in great detail, is that Jesus claimed he would come back one day. Now, this is a crazy belief. I understand that. And this is what fascinated me about it. It's one thing to argue that a guy 2,000 years ago died on a cross. Okay, crucifixion was the method of death at that time. You could say, okay, he rose from the grave, and you can believe that by faith. You can't prove it beyond a shadow of a doubt, but and some people will argue that, but from my standpoint and from yours, you can't prove it. But, and what also sets Jesus apart is that he claimed to be God. Now, many people have claimed to be God, but there's many religions where there's a messenger of God, a prophet of God, a teacher of God. Jesus claimed he was God. That alone is not significant. We all know, most of us have heard that. But what was significant to me is the way he predicted the future. There's 2 chapters, Matthew 24 and Revelation 6, that I'll cover in the second part and break that all down. But let's assume you say, I don't believe in the Bible. That's fine. Every argument that you have against Christianity, right? Like I said, I don't care if you believe in evolution. I don't care if you don't believe in the resurrection or an empty tomb. I don't care if you believe that the Bible is a bunch of fairy tales. I don't care if you believe that it's written by people, there are mistakes, it's a hateful book, it's a book of a monstrous sadistic God. Every argument that you can put against the Bible, I will concede. And yet, you will still not convince me to change my mind. And it's not because of hard-headedness. It's because of all the things that Jesus said would happen. See, predicting the future and understanding those predictions, if they come to pass, proves in the time frame that he says they would come to pass, proves he's God. And if they're leading to his return, proves he did rise from the grave, and prove that everything that he said about heaven, about hell, about being saved, if you want to call it that, is true. And this is what fascinated me, because it either is or it isn't. See, one of the things that I have a huge problem with is when people say, I believe. Because it doesn't matter what you believe, whether you believe God exists, whether you believe he doesn't exist, whether you believe the Bible is true or not, whether you believe in evolution or creation. Your beliefs are irrelevant. My beliefs are irrelevant. Our beliefs do not alter reality. What is, and what isn't. Just because it doesn't matter if nobody on earth believed God exists or everybody believed that God exists, it doesn't alter reality. God either exists or it doesn't. The Bible is either true or it isn't. Jesus either is God or he isn't. He's either telling the truth or he's a liar. The Bible is either fairy tales or it's not. It doesn't matter what we believe. And it doesn't matter what I believe. I can say to you, here's what I believe. It's irrelevant. Many people believed that the sun revolved around the earth at one point. We know that's not true. Many people used to believe that if somebody needed a blood transfusion, you just pick anybody and you hook them up. Well, now Modern medical science says, yeah, blood types do matter. It doesn't matter what we believe or understand at a moment in time at a given point. It doesn't affect a reality. Whatever you believe is your faith, whatever I believe is my faith. To me, the question is there any truth? What is real? What is reality? Regardless of what I believe, regardless of what you believe, regardless of what anybody believes, it doesn't matter. The goal of science is to find out what reality is, what is real, what is really going on, regardless of what the hypothesis is. Sure, we have a hypothesis, this is what we believe is happening, then we test that theory to see, and we find out what the reality is. And that reality changes, not the reality, the hypothesis change as we gain more knowledge, but reality always remains the same. And to me, that is what I wanted to find out. Because if Jesus predicting the future actually happens, then that means that he is God, he knew the future, he did rise from the grave, as he said he would, and everything that he says, regardless of what you believe the rest of the Bible is, I'm not here to argue Genesis 1:1. I'm not here to argue anything about the past. That is the way I'm built. There are some people who something happens in the past and they dwell on it and they wish they could go back and they wish they could change it. I'm not built that way. I always look to the future. If something is going wrong in my life right now, I try to figure out how tomorrow can I fix it? How can I change my path tomorrow? I can't go back and change what's been done. How do I move forward? That's the way that I've always looked at things. Tomorrow is always going to be better than today if I can figure out how to take steps tomorrow to change the circumstances I'm in today. I don't dwell on the past, I don't look backwards, and that's the same thing with my faith. It's just how I'm built. Some people do the opposite. But I'm here to share with you how I became a believer in Jesus after all the things that had happened. One of the things, though, that I want to talk to you about and what I want to clarify going forward is I'm not here to preach to you. I'm not here to Bible thump you. I'm not here to tell you that you need to change or to be any different. I'm just here to try and share and clarify some misunderstandings, because as you can see, I'm probably not well liked by a lot of other Christians, and just being a follower of Jesus, I'm probably not going to be liked by a lot of you and talking the way that I do. I'm not here for a popularity contest. I'm here to hopefully provide some content that gets people to think a little bit. One of the things that we often hear in our culture is this word sin. S-I-N. This is a sin. That's a sin. Everything is sin. We're sinful people. We're sinful race. We live sinful lives. We do this. We're sinning. Well, what does it mean? What does that three-letter word mean? Most of Christianity today is telling you what sin is. Oh, you lied. That's a sin. Oh, you committed adultery. That's a sin. Thought lustful thoughts. That's a sin. Watch pornography. That's a sin. In a same-sex relationship. That's a sin. But what's sin? Is it about morality? Is it about righteousness? Is it about obedience to God? What's it about? Some Christians will say, well, the Bible says in 1 John that sin is lawlessness. So, breaking the law is sin. Oh, no, but it's breaking God's law. No, when the government says, you know what, to stop the spread of the virus, we need to close churches and they make it law. No, that's man's law. This law. Sin is lawlessness against God. Oh, okay. And yet, Romans 13, I think it says, be subject to all authorities. But I digress. So, what is sin? It's about understanding who God is. The Bible talks about that God is life. God gave life. God gives life to all of us. His law is life. And if we read Genesis 1, it says that, at creation in the beginning, right, this is how God set things up. So it says here in verse 26, then God said, let us make man in our image according to our likeness. Let them have dominion over the fish in the sea, over the birds of the air, over the cattle, over the earth, and every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God he created them, male and female. He created them. And God blessed them and said, be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it, have dominion over the fish of the sea, the birds of the air, and every living thing that moves over the earth. God gave life. And to understand what sin is, I think we need to look at what Deuteronomy 30 says, because it's an interesting passage. Because the Bible is full of, I think it's over like 600 different laws. So whenever we do something, whenever a Christian wants to say, "Oh, you're breaking the law," they've got 600 to choose from. But I think we've missed the point, because it says in Deuteronomy 30, in verse 11, for this commandment, singular, which I command to you today is not too mysterious for you, nor is it that far off. It is not in heaven that you should say, who will ascend into heaven for us and bring it to us, that we may hear it and do it? Nor is it beyond the sea that you should say, who will go over the sea for us, bring it to us, that we may hear it and do it? But the word is very near you, in your mouth and in your heart, that you may do it. Pastors, teachers, priests, religious leaders are often the ones who tell us, lay people, common people, sinners, what is sin and what isn't. They dictate it to us as if it's an edict from God. Yet, this passage says nobody needs to ascend to heaven. Nobody needs to ascend to a higher spiritual understanding to bring it to the common people, to the morons, regular morons, right? So that they may learn and do it. Nobody, the Bible says, we don't need to go over to another country or another place to learn about it so that we can understand it. It says that it's very near you, in your mouth and in your heart, that you may do it. Then it goes on in verse 15. See, I have set before you today life and good, death and evil, and that I command you today to love the Lord your God, to walk in his ways and keep his commandments. Then it says in verse 19, I call heaven and earth as witnesses today against you, that I have set before you life and death, blessing and cursing. Therefore choose life, that both you and your descendants may live. Sin is not a mysterious thing, according to the Bible. It's not where someone gets to tell you what's right and what's wrong. It's something that you should already know. And if this is true and we know it, then it's something that we can easily test. For example, let's take some of the big ones. We know that murder is a sin and is wrong to murder someone. So that's easy. But what about coveting somebody? So let's say my neighbor, drives a vehicle that I like. And I covet that. I want that. And so I set goals. I make plans. I'm like, you know what? That's the one I want. I really want that car. Really want that vehicle. Why is that wrong? Why is that a sin? It's one of the big 10. See, we've been taught that sin are rules. Rules about morality, rules about the laws of God. And it has made a lot of us feel very crappy about ourselves. I think most people have walked away from God because they've been made to feel unworthy, unloved, just can't measure up, never be good enough. But I don't think that that's what this means. Some people, if you're a non-Christian, they want to talk to you, they might say, are you a good person? Most people would say, yeah, I'm a good person. Like, I may not be perfect. Well, I'm not perfect. I may not do all the right things, but generally I try to be nice to people. I try to be good to people. I try to do good things. And so most people would say, yeah, I'm a decent person. And I think in our minds we say to ourselves, well, I'm not as good as so-and-so. I'm not as bad as so-and-so. And we kind of place ourselves in the middle. Someone says to you, how are you a smart person? You can be like, yeah, I'm fairly intelligent. I may not be as smart as so-and-so, but I'm not as dumb as so-and-so, and we just this is what happens in our minds. So we're always kind of around the middle, and we're always the centrist. We're always the level-headed person, because we're not as extreme as this one or rational as this one, and logical as this person. We're just kind of always halfway, right? So most people would say, yeah, I'm a good person. And then they might say, okay, well, let's put this to the test. Have you ever lied to someone, told a lie? And then most people would respond, yeah, I've told a lie. Okay, well, how many lies? And you might be like, well, too many to count. Okay, and then they might say, okay, what do you call somebody who lies so many times that it's too many to count? Well, the answer is you'd call them a liar. Okay, so then you're a liar. And then what if they asked you, okay, so have you ever stolen anything regardless of value? And they'd be like, yeah, I know for myself, I stole change from my mom's, purse, or the change jar, or I stole a chocolate bar from the store or something like that. So I'd be like, yeah, I've stolen things. Okay, well, what do you call a person who steals things? Well, you call them a thief. And so now I'm a lying thief, And so they go through these, and so most people would say, yeah, okay, I've done these things. But everybody's done them. Jesus says, if you've thought lustful thoughts towards somebody, you've already committed adultery. And we know adultery is a sin. So have you ever thought lustful thoughts? Well, everybody's thought lustful thoughts. Everybody has told lies. And so we might ignore this person. We might be like, okay, so, all right, well, I'm not as bad as so-and-so, and I'm not as good as so-and-so. So why do I care? Why? Of course I don't think that God's going to send me to hell because I'm a decent person. And then we kind of move on with our life. But let me flip it around and see if this makes more sense. We know that everybody's lied. We know that we've all told so many lies we can't count. But let me ask you, have you ever been lied to? Have you ever been lied to by somebody who's been close to you, family or friend? I want you to think about that instance. How did it make you feel? Probably pretty crappy. What if they said, when you confronted them about the lie, yeah, but everybody lies. You've told hundreds of lies. I've told hundreds of lies. We've all lied. It's no big deal. Or it was a little white lie. What's the big deal? Why are you being like this? No, of course that wouldn't be the response. If they did, you'd be even more hurt. You'd feel more crappy, and the friendship relationship would end right there. If they took that kind of attitude. So think about the time that you've been lied to by this person. Feel crappy about it. You confront them about it. You can't trust them the way that you used to. Death has come into that friendship or relationship. Something, a part of you, the trust has died between you. And the only way that there might be hope of reconciliation, of repairing the damage that's been done by this lie, is for the person to say, I'm so sorry, I was wrong. Maybe they were scared to tell you the truth, whatever the case is, and they're sincere about it, and they say, I'm sorry, can you please forgive me? Then maybe the relationship can be fixed. Why is adultery a sin? Have you ever been cheated on? What does that do to you inside? It probably cuts you very deep. And death has entered the relationship. Death has entered that marriage or that relationship. You don't trust the person the same way. And what's even worse is, let's say that relationship ends. Let's say the cheating is so bad, or has just hurt you so much that the relationship ends. So there's death to the relationship. But also, how will it affect you going into your next relationship, or the relationship like that after that? It'll probably affect every relationship you have after that, because there'll always be this feeling in the back of your mind. Oh, they're a little bit late. They're staying at work a little bit late. Are they being unfaithful? And that lack of trust might hurt your relationship, even though the person might not be doing anything wrong, but it's this residual effect that happened, in the past. Why is coveting wrong that I mentioned earlier? Because maybe you get yourself into debt by trying to attain possessions that you can't afford, but that you covet. Maybe it causes you to work that much more, be away from your family. Maybe it causes you to be frustrated. You see your neighbor, better house or better job or whatever, and you just feel like they get all the breaks and you don't, and you become resentful, you become bitter, and you get frustrated with where you are in life, and you can take it out on your kids or your spouse because you're internally frustrated and angry, and you can bring death to your household because you're trying to achieve a lifestyle that's at that point in your life beyond where you're at, or might cause you to make rash decisions just to attain something that you might not be able to afford, and it can bring death to your situation. These are warning signs of what we do and the decisions that we make. See, to me, the clearest explanation that I can get from the Bible is sin is anything that we think, say, or do that brings death to ourselves, to others, either physically or emotionally or spiritually, or to the planet. See, the question is, what have you done? It's what's been done to you so that you can understand how what you have done might have affected other people. The Bible says that death and life are in the tongue, and those who choose it will eat of its fruit. So whatever we say, whether we bring death or life from what we say to other people or to ourselves, will bear that fruit. See, the sin is not rules for you to break or for you to uphold. Sin is our nature. Every single day, you and I choose life or death. And when we choose death, either physically, emotionally, or spiritually to someone else, we sin. And we can understand it by thinking of it this way. And the biggest problem that I have with many Christians today is that what they think, say, and do is bringing death to those who don't believe. How many times have you been told that what you do is sinful, what you do is wrong, what you do is evil? Is that words of life or words of death? But then how many of us turn around, somebody cuts us off, ticks us off, we go to work, we scream somebody out, or we snap at someone, and we go through our entire day being pissed off that we got cut off, and all we do is spread death and venom to other people. Because our day got ruined because somebody cut us off. We all do it. And maybe even in this video, maybe I've brought death to someone. Maybe by being as harsh against people who are Christians today and calling them are the dumbest people and thinking it, maybe I've brought death to somebody. I'm not trying to, but I just really think that these types of things, so much of these things are incorrect. And the problem that I have is that it's affecting everybody. We are divided. We are a nation. We are a world divided. We all want to save the planet, to make sure we don't become extinct, we don't kill each other off. But you're not a Christian unless you vote Republican. You're not a Christian unless you go to this type of church. Yada, yada, yada. It's insanity to me. Especially if what I've said to you about what sin is makes sense to you. If you can go tomorrow, regardless of what you believe, whether you believe in Jesus or not, if you can go tomorrow through your day and say, am I bringing life or death to the people around me? Am I saying things that are killing them on the inside, that what I'm saying is making them feel worse about themselves or better about themselves, and thinking of it and changing your mind about it and say, man, when I think about the things that I've done or said this week and how I've just gone around and maybe I've been pretty ticked off about the way my life is or the way my relationship is, and I've just been snapping here or cutting people off or whatever. Being angry at this person, doing this, saying that. And you think, man, maybe that's not bringing life to somebody's life. Maybe it's not bringing life to my life. Then regardless what you believe, maybe it might make a positive difference. And if you do believe in Jesus and you do believe in the Bible, then then test this. Test if that's what it means, because in this passage it says commandment, not commandments. That God has set before us life and death. And if you filter everything in the Bible isn't about rules that we're supposed to hold to. It's it's example after example after example after example about how people throughout history bring death to other people. It's to say, here are regular people, and here are the ways that they've brought death into other people's life. And to think about it differently, to be like, maybe I shouldn't say that harsh word. Maybe even though I believe I'm in the right, to not say what I'm really thinking. And then to think, maybe I just need to think differently. That's what I want out of this video. Enough with the rules. Enough with the expectations. Enough with saying this is the standard God wants. No. Just bring life to other people. And maybe pay attention to how much when you choose not to bring life to other people. And understand that that's what the Bible calls sin. And it says, for all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. If God brings life, if God has made life, then he wants us to bring life to his creation, to our planet, to the people around us, to ourselves. He doesn't want us to overeat or kill ourselves, but we do. We reach the point of hopelessness, or I know, at times when I feel terrible about my weight, I do the one thing that I shouldn't be doing is I binge eat. And it's not that God's going to punish me because I don't follow his rules. He just doesn't want the results. If I overeat and I overeat and I overeat, I'm going to kill myself. I'm going to die sooner than what he would like me to. And all of us do things to ourselves and to other people and to our planet every single day. But Jesus said he came to bring life. See, one of the things that I think has been lost in all of the politics and the division and the my right is right and your right is wrong of where we're at in the world today is that if you look at Jesus instead of his followers, instead of me, instead of the pastor on YouTube, instead of other Christians and what they teach, if you just look at Jesus, there's a lot of things to like and to aspire to want to be like from what he says and what he does and how he treats people. But instead we associate Christian with the people instead of the person of Jesus Christ. And why I choose to say that I'm a follower of Jesus Christ instead of a Christian is because of those divisions and differences. And if you're listening right now, I just want you to stop what you're doing. First of all, I want to thank you for listening to me as long as you have. But one more thing I want to share with you. I don't care if you're blue-haired or pink-haired or no-haired. I don't care if you have piercings or tattoos. I don't care if you've ever gone to church or if you've lived in church your whole life. I don't care what you've done. I don't care who you are, where you come from, what background you have. I don't care if you're straight, gay, bisexual, transgendered, male, female, whatever. I don't care about any of those things. I don't care what color your skin is. I want you to know right now that God loves you. He made you the way that you are, regardless of what anybody says, or thinks about you. He's made you the way that you are, and He loves you. Jesus said, "For God so loved the world," that includes you, "that He gave His only begotten Son, that whosoever believes in Him should not perish or die, but have everlasting life." Many faiths believe in a life after this one. And I believe in a life after this one because, as I said in part two, I hope to go through why I believe Jesus is who He says He is, and He talks about heaven. He talks about preparing a place for those who believe in Him. So why is it important to believe in Him? If you think about my example about being lied to, that person may ask you for forgiveness. They might say, "You know what, I'm sorry, please forgive me." And you might say, "You know what, okay, I forgive you." When we say sorry to God for the things, for the death that we've brought to other people and ourselves and this planet, He'll forgive us. But just as like somebody who lied to you, you can forgive them. There's a price to be paid. Maybe the price is that you don't trust them the same way that you used to. Maybe it's that the relationship ends. Maybe you say, "You know what, I forgive you, but I just can't be your friend anymore because I just don't trust you anymore." There is a price to be paid. There is a cost, even if forgiveness is extended. So it says that God will forgive us, but the price of us bringing death to other people is that we deserve death. But God doesn't want death for us. He wants life. And so He sent Jesus. He came in the form of a man, so 100% God, 100% man. And there's a whole theological conversation around that. But He came, He lived with us. See, a lot of religions say, do this, do that, do this, do that, and maybe you will earn God's acceptance. But that's not the message of Jesus. Jesus, as God, came to humanity. We didn't change. We weren't any different. He still came to us. In Romans it says that God demonstrated His love, that while we were yet sinners, while we were still bringing death to ourselves and each other and the planet, Jesus died for us. He paid the price of death that we deserve for the death that we bring. When somebody commits a crime and they stand before a judge, the judge doesn't say, "Oh, I see that you've given to charity. I see you've done all these good things." No, they're tried on whether they're guilty or innocent of the crime that they've committed. When we bring death to ourselves and other people and our planet, we're guilty of those things. It doesn't matter what good things we've done. We're not going to stand before God and be held, and the scales of good and evil aren't going to be offset, because and even if they were, if we paid attention for how much death we bring, our good would never outweigh our sin. The older I get, the more lives I've told, the more things I've done wrong, the more lustful thoughts I've had, the more rules I've broken, the more things I've coveted of people, their job, their income, their life, when they don't have the same struggles that I have, and I want it's easy for rich people to make it through this world because they have all the money. Like, you know what I mean? I don't have their problems and they don't have my problems, and sometimes I look over there and I wish I had their life. So there's a lot of things that I do that's wrong the older that I get. And the recognition of all those wrong things. I don't become less perfect or less imperfect, pardon me, the older I get. I become more imperfect. I carry more baggage. I'm more broken. I'm more hurt by the broken relationships that I have and the way that hurt people have hurt me, and the way that I carry that forward and hurt other people. So it would never match up to our sin. But if we're going to stand before God one day, we're going to know we're guilty of those things. We know that we've done these things. But have we said sorry, we were wrong, we've made mistakes, please forgive us, and believed that Jesus paid the penalty of death that we deserve, and he bore it willingly for us? That's the life that he brings, and he brings freedom. I will always make mistakes. I will always let people down. I will always lose my temper when my team loses. I swear at the television. I'm just a broken person. I'm imperfect and I'm flawed. And I get angry at the dumbest things. But I hope that this video reaches some of you, regardless of what you believe. Maybe if we could just bring a little bit of life to the people around us instead of the death that we bring. Maybe things would be a little bit different. But know that God loves you. No matter what you've done, no matter who you are, that he sent his son to pay the price of death that we all deserve. He's paid that price. The payment has already been made. It is a gift that God offers to us to accept. We can either accept his gift or not. Knowing that, because think about it this way. I'm a big sports fan. Say we're watching TV, watching on the TV, and I see somebody take a two-handed slash against my player on my team that I'm cheering for. Lose my mind right away. Refs don't see it. Nobody sees it. The guy's laying on the ice. Broken wrist. What do I want? I want somebody to jump off that bench and beat the crap out of them. I want them to end up being injured. That reaction, as normal as it might be for every sports fan, is not bringing life. It's bringing death. We want that retribution. But we want it because there is a victim in the situation that we feel is being unfair. The situation is unfair because the refs didn't see it. Nobody's getting punished. Nobody's getting a penalty. Nobody's going to might even get suspended. And we feel that injustice, and I know that this is sports and people are like, why is he talking about sports when there's so much injustice in the world? And I'm just picking an example. But think about all the victims of the things that you've said and done that needs to be held to account. There needs to be justice for the people that you've hurt in your life. And we'll all stand before God. But the difference is that he paid the price. He understands we're imperfect, broken people. We're not going to become perfect. We're not going to do the right thing. But we learn and we grow and we try to be better people. And if we can humble ourselves and say, you know what, God, I'm sorry I screwed up today. I said this thing, the other day again, flew off the handle when my team was losing. I'm really working on it. Most of the time I can keep it under wraps. Sometimes I do get pretty upset. But and just say, you know what, like, Lord, I messed up. Please forgive me. Pray that I didn't do any damage to the feelings of my wife or, my family. And you just try and grow, and that's life. You just, and you trust that He's paid the price, that you're forgiven, you're free, but we got to acknowledge it. We got to humble ourselves, and just, when we screw up, and we admit it. We don't hide behind that everybody else has done it. We just acknowledge it. And so what does God want from us? He wants us to trust in that. He wants us to say, sorry, I messed up. I've done a lot of bad things in my life, brought a lot of death to other people, hurt a lot of other people. Please forgive me. Thank you for paying the price of death that I owe, and trusting in Jesus that He paid that price. And that He brings a message of that whoever you are, no matter what you've done, no matter who you are, no matter what kind of, who you love, it doesn't matter. He loves you. And if you trust in that, the Bible says, if you confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised Him from the dead, you will be saved. All who call upon the name of the Lord will be saved. Well, to call upon His name, you need to know it, and it's Jesus. God incarnate, God, the God-man, came to earth, lived a perfect life, and died a horrible death willingly to pay for all the things that we've messed up. And a lot of people say, well, why doesn't, with all the hurt and stuff in the world, why doesn't God do something about it? Why doesn't He step up? One thing I didn't tell you is that by the end of the year, the bully had moved away. And people started asking me about my faith. And as I learned more, into the next year, people would, instead of teasing me, they'd start asking me questions. And I started believing. I started learning these things. I started studying, and I started thinking and trying to, figure out what I believed. There's a lot of things that churches and Christians do today that I don't like. I don't think it is biblical. I think it's based on tradition. I think it's based on our opinions. And it's not doing a lot of good. So I hope this message has brought you hope. I hope that it's brought you some peace. I hope it's brought you some understanding about how God sees you and how He loves you. And if you just call out to Him, He'll hear you. See, the biggest proof that I have that God exists is that I'm alive today. I didn't walk away. I didn't become more depressed. I didn't give up hope and take my life. He saved me. He allowed me to be so angry at Him that it kept me alive, and I learned a few things, and I came to believe. And I'm alive today, 25 years later, talking to you about Him. Even after all of that. That to me, for me, when I think about my life, is the biggest proof. Because I had no reason to believe. But events have happened in my life that I can't deny. So I hope that this helps, and thank you so much for taking the time. And again, I'll try and do a part 2 to be a little bit more technical, but I wanted you to hear my story. I wanted you to hear some of the things that I think are misunderstood and are cause of great division and great divide. And regardless of whether you are a religious person or not, maybe we could just bring a little bit of life into other people's lives instead of death. So take care. Thank you.